Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Facebook Live. It is the 17th of April, year 2024. Welcome. I'm hoping everyone is experiencing warmer weather. Spring is coming in, the winter is leaving us. So everybody's enjoying a little bit of warmer weather. It's getting pretty warm here in Texas. Let me get started with the panel. Today we have April with us. April is a psychic, a medium. She does counseling in her professional life as well as in her personal life. So if anybody's looking for any kind of one-on-one counseling, please contact April. Then we have Patricia here, who is part of our core group of meditators. Good evening, Patricia. I see Hugh joining as well. He has been regular on our panel. And then we have Sharon as well. Good evening, Sharon. Good evening, Hugh. Good to see y'all. So I'd start off, April. This is a question from, actually, before I start with April. There's a public service announcement. Next week, we will not have group meditation. So whoever is looking forward to group meditation, we won't, because I will be at Dr. Joe Dispenza's advanced follow-up Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, and then we have Walk for the World this Sunday on the 21st at 9 a.m. my time, so 10 a.m. Eastern. So if everybody can participate, because there's about like 150, 200,000 people that do this walk, and it actually brings a lot of peace. So summer, all the people that talk about the war in Gaza, talk about wars everywhere, the Ukraine, let's bring peace. Let's come together and do this walk at 10 a.m. If y'all are passionate about bringing peace, then bring peace in your heart at 10 a.m. on Sunday, and let's see if we can make a difference in the Earth's field. That's my public announcement. And then let's go to the question. This is coming from Jonathan April. He says, could you speak about resistance to challenges and dissolving challenges? Please, it seems like there is a resistance to challenges, and dissolving is the least appropriate thing to do. I'm going to put you on mute, Sharon, because I can hear feedback. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm going to put this in the chat too.
Yeah. Because the last part of the statement is it's an interesting thing. So that caught me with what he was saying. So dissolving challenges. Well, I'm thinking, because there's different ways I can take the answer to this. Basically, if you're born here on this planet, which we all are, you're going to have challenges in life. We're all going to have challenges. We're all going to face them in our different ways. And most of the challenges that we face, for many of us, they start out in childhood. We're born into certain families or certain circumstances that are very, very challenging, many times very painful. And what the child does, because cognitively they're not able to step outside of the problems, they're not able to step outside of the dynamics of which they're living within. So the child takes everything into themselves, and they interpret everything that's happening in their world as if it's their fault. It's because they're bad. It's because they're not tall enough, because they're not smart enough, or whatever. They come up each person comes up with their reasons, their rationale as to why they're not good enough. That's why they're going through whatever challenges they're going through. So if mom doesn't have enough time for you, it's because I'm not important or I'm not lovable. If dad is gone, works a lot, or is angry, it's because I need to be better, or I'm not lovable, I'm not loved, right? So it always turns inward for the child. So those are our belief systems. When we get older, and as Eckhart says, we have suffered enough, we start to awaken and we start to say, there has to be something else. There has to be more to this life. And we start to want to heal and want to get better. The problem is that we have to face all of those childhood things. And sometimes it's teenager things, and sometimes it's young adult things too. I've had people that, say they were fine until they were 22 and a trauma happened. But the resistance is because we have to face those pains, and we don't want to face them. We think it's much easier to just keep trying to run from them. The funny thing is that I was working with somebody one day, and they were talking about how they wanted to move to a different state. And it just dawned on me, you can move all you want, but the problem is within you. So it's like trying to run from your own hand. It's going with you. You can't run away from it, right? So the resistance is because we don't want to face the pain. It's also hard to actually look at ourselves as well and see what role did we play in it. Our nervous systems like to stay the same. That's part of the human condition. It thinks it's keeping us safe. So if we are going to face these challenges and dissolve them, then it would require our nervous system to change as well, which is unsafe to the body. It's unsafe to the mind. And we much rather just keep everything the same. That's also part of the ego and the shadow too. When you start healing and you start healing the ego and letting go of these attachments and letting go of these beliefs, one of the things that the shadow can do is sneak up on you and tell you something that's not true. So for example, if you somebody will say something to you like, okay, well, I'm going to leave and go here, but what you hear is, I'm tired of you, I need to leave. That's not what they said, right? But that's what you heard. That's how the shadow sneaks up on you. The resistance is really fear. It's fear and the not wanting to face all of these inner child pains, beliefs, attachments, because even though it may be miserable, it's safe. You know that. You know the misery. You don't know what's on the other side, and you don't know if you'll really be better, or if it will really be safer to let go of these things. So there's a theory out there that whatever we do because it's benefiting us in some way, or we wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it if you didn't think there was any benefit to it at all. So a lot of times we keep a lot of these negative patterns and beliefs and attachments because we do feel like it's going to keep us safe or it's going to save us from judgment. It doesn't in the end. So, but the last sentence here challenges anything that someone faces in life. Now, it can be everyday stressors, dealing with your boss, dealing with a coworker, dealing with a family member, a difficult family member. It could be paying bills. It could be not having money. But other major challenges are within our childhood, usually within our family. whether our mom didn't love us, our dad didn't love us, they didn't spend time with us, they criticized, they judged, maybe they were abusive. So challenges really can be anything. They can, I have a daughter right now who is faced with not having health care. So for 2 days, she's been researching that topic, and that's a challenge. And it is actually kind of stressful, right? So it can be anything. So the last part of this is, it seems like there is a resistance to challenges, and dissolving is the least appropriate thing to do. I'm interested in why they're saying it's the least appropriate thing to do. Dissolving. Why would you say it's the least appropriate thing? What do you think?
Probably their mind says that the challenge will never go away.
Yeah.
So it's easier to like dissolving it seems like a megalithic mountain. You know how some people make like a problem into it's so huge that it's never ever ever going to change, right?
Yeah.
So then that becomes a challenge.
Yeah, the truth is though is that we all have those things within us, and it's actually better to face them though, because they will follow you. And especially like I work with substance abuse, and people with substance abuse, they're trying to mask and hide all of those pains through the substances. It doesn't work, but they continue doing that for year after year, right? And then they get, now not only do they have the issue, the problem, the pain, but they also have 20 years of substance abuse that they have to deal with. So whenever we're trying to run or hide from our challenges, our problems, our pains, really dealing with them is the best way. And the thing is once you do deal with them and face them, and you feel that pain and you cry and you release that, it goes away. It gets to go away. The only way it comes back is if you don't change that core inner belief, if you don't learn to release your attachments. That's how these challenges can keep resurfacing, right? So I'm not sure. It's interesting statement there. Dissolving it is the least appropriate thing to do. I mean, it could be like what Poonam is saying, is that it just seems like it's too big to deal with, and maybe that would cause them to be worse than better. And there is a point when you're dealing with your inner child and you're dealing with your inner self that it almost seems like maybe you have made yourself worse for a moment. But truly, when you look at these things inside and you heal them, it is much better. You're able to bring the light within the body. You're able to bring the healing within the body, because these challenges, as they're calling them, or pains, are blocking you. It's literally like turning the light off. They're blocking you. So the other thing I was thinking, that maybe they were saying that instead of dealing with the challenge, it's in dissolving is the least resistance. Dissolving. I was thinking maybe they were thinking that you know how we talk about that you need to just release attachment. Sometimes people will say that that's not actually dealing with the problem. And that can be true depending on what it is. You actually need to go back to the events. And there's some people that say that you don't need to do this, but after doing this my psychic work I've been doing for over like 24 years, but my counseling I've been doing for 17 years. It actually is beneficial to go back into those spaces, go back to that person, go back to that 9-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 22-year-old, and be with them. Be with them in that space. Give them the love that they needed at the time. Surround them with the white light. And then bring that healed part forward. We bring that healed new person. You go back to the 9-year-old. You heal that 9-year-old, and you bring that healed 9-year-old in with you into your heart space, and you integrate it into your heart space. Now, from that point forward, when that feeling, that emotion goes to come up, then you stop it. That's when you stop it. That's when you say, I have already dealt with this. I have already healed this space. Now I'm not going to keep going back there. If you truly know you've truly healed it. Now, there are times where there's another layer to it that you have to deal with. But this is where you don't let yourself keep going back and back and back and reopening the same wound, because the mind will do that. The mind never forgets, and you'll be doing nothing, and all of a sudden this memory from when you were 14 will pop up. And if you know you've healed this space, then you say, no, you know what? I'm not going back there. I'm going to be right here, right now, in the present moment. So I've talked a lot. Do we have questions?
You're incredibly amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Eternally grateful for everything that you say. He even, on one of your Facebook lives, he said, April helped me a lot by something along those lines. He said, because I read his YouTube comments. He listens to the videos on YouTube. So the first thing you said, April, is if he were born here, because of a karmic accumulation, we are going to face some kind of challenge.
Yeah.
Which is not a challenge. It is actually a lesson our soul needs to learn in this lifetime. Like you say, right?
Yeah.
And even Dolores Cannon says the same thing. How many times are you going to repeat second grade? When are you going to graduate to 10th grade and 11th grade and do your bachelor's and do your master's, right?
Right.
If you're failing second grade over and over again, lifetime after lifetime, you're just stuck on second grade, right? So the challenge has been any kind of experience that our mind wants to label so-called negative, right? Or as a problem is a challenge.
Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah, I mean, we can use the word challenge, pain, issue, problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the same thing, but until you get to that space. So for me, I just had this conversation with somebody else, and they said, well, what's the first step? I said, the first step is actually coming to that space where you're like, okay, something has to change. I'm miserable. I want to be happy. That's the first step, really. I got to make a note here of something that I said. I'm making a note on my own thing. That's the first step, is that awareness that there has to be something else, that there has to be a different way, that there is a different way, there is a better way. And then you start to wake up, and then you become more self-aware. And that is the crucial key. You must become self-aware, and you must start looking at yourself and going into all those little crevices and places and spaces within you that seem to cause you misery, that seem to cause you sadness and pain. Then you look at those spaces and you say, why do I have this pain here?
Mm-hmm.
What is the story? What is the belief? What is the attachment? But I was actually just listening to Dolores today, and because for my life, it has been incredibly difficult, extremely difficult. And I did that. apparently I made this grand plan before I
Mm.
came here. I made this wonderful plan before I came here. And I also had a lot of children. And I believe that if you want to work out karma, have children. You will work it out, right? Um, and she said, some people are here and they have these lifetimes that are just like, nothing really big happens. Everything kind of goes smoothly for them. And she said, you
They're
can't
just
tell.
resting. They're just resting.
Yep. She said, you don't know if they're either resting from a last lifetime or they're resting for the next lifetime. They're
Yes.
getting ready, right? So she
Mhm.
said, don't judge, because there's so many times in my life where I'm like, this is not fair. Why do I have this terrible life? Why do I have all these problems? Right.
Mhm.
And I chose those problems. And maybe in my last lifetime, I did rest. Or perhaps in the next one, I will rest. Right. So she does, that is true. And you do pick the challenges. Now, those can manifest in different ways, but ultimately, you will learn the lessons you pick, how the lessons show up. That's where the free will comes in.
And I think, Patricia, you said, do we welcome the challenges instead of resisting? Yes, because we are looking at the lesson. We need to pass that lesson, right? It's an exam. Like we are in a continuity of doing like a final exam, right? Some challenge or the, like for me recently has been my car. My car broke down like 3 weeks ago and it overheated. I kept driving it, so I overheated it a lot more. And so, of course, now my gasket is blown, my radiator's gone. And so I bring it to the shop. Now, again, it's gone back to the shop. Something else is wrong with it, right? I think like he said something about the cylinder bolts are damaged or something like that. So I mean, you have to live with that challenge, right? Like I got it towed. I had to go pay whatever, like it was $2,600 to get it fixed the last time. It's going to be some other thing right now, right? Out of the blue. Those challenges come, but you should see how I deal with the mechanic, the owner of the store. I always say I'm absolutely grateful. I trust you. I mean, it's very the way I deal with the challenge, and this is the whole reason I deal with it in such a calm and really surrendered manner is because I know the moment I resist, what I resist persists, what I fight strengthens. This is a law from A Course in Miracles that Eckhart writes in A New Earth as well. This is like something like it's ingrained in the cell of my, like at the cellular level of my soul. I remember what I resist persists, what I fight strengthens. So if he's resisting his challenge, he's not taking the lesson or taking the final exam, not passing the final exam every time a challenge is. And it's not only Jonathan, it's everybody. If you're not passing the final exam, right, you're resisting. The moment you resist, you persist. It persists. It persists. It persists. So the only way, and this is another mantra from Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I know, April, you recently posted something along these lines. Change your energy, change your life. Remember, change your energy, change your life. It always takes a shift in our consciousness to fix any challenge, any problem, whatever we are facing. It has to be a change in energy. And in A New Earth, Eckhart talks about either we are in a state of acceptance. There are only three modalities of awakened doing: acceptance, joy, and enthusiasm. If we are not in joy and enthusiasm, we have to be in a state of acceptance. If we are not in a state of acceptance, what we resist persists. It's universal law. that what we resist, we're sending out that karmic energy of resistance, and then it's going to come back as something else will go wrong. If you get mad at the towing guy, something will go wrong with the mechanic. If you get mad at the mechanic, something will go wrong with the Uber driver. Like I tipped the Uber driver like double the amount of money, right? So I was like grateful. It's all gratitude that, oh, I'm grateful that that person came exactly on time. I'm grateful that that person dropped me off. I mean, I was grateful that the towing guy, once I dropped off the car at the mechanic, he brought me back home because it's in the same neighborhood where the mechanic is. So, I mean, people, once you're surrendered, that's how you dissolve. When you talk about dissolving,
But I have a question to you, Poonam. Like, you seem like a person that doesn't have resistance anymore. You teach us how to surrender. So why this lesson happened to you, to someone that doesn't need that lesson?
to show that, like, the universe has to show me, right? Are you still conscious? Can you say that, are you still conscious, right?
But you passed, you in a sense, you passed the test with the first time
You
you
never,
dropped.
if
Why
you're on
is
earth,
it
you're
great
never passing.
again?
You're never
No,
passing the test. You're
it's
never
that-
passing the test because even if you graduate, right, there's another level of, like, the karma does not, what, um,
So what it is though, Patricia, just because you learn these techniques and you learn these lifestyles and you learn this energy and this mindset, that does not mean that things will not happen in life. Whatever is created here on earth will atrophy. It will break at some point or die. Plants die, bugs die, it will die at some point in life. A car will break. So that doesn't mean things will not happen. However, it is about how you handle it. And remember at the workshop when you asked a question, and I actually used this on myself recently, and Kelly said to you, is the thought of fear or is the thought of love? That is how you know if you are resisting a challenge. Are you thinking with fear or are you thinking with love? Poonam is thinking with love only. She is accepting that her car has broken. That does not mean that she likes her car to be broken or wants her car to be broken, but she's accepted the challenge with love. She's not resisting. So it doesn't mean that you are going to have the most perfect life once you start applying these things. Also, this could be a thing, and she could have a conversation with the universe and say, hey, you could back off a little bit, but they could be using her to teach the mechanic because she's practicing it so much.
so the other part that I want to explain is what Sadhguru says in his book Karma is there's a warehouse of karma called Prarabdha karma, and we are born with what is called, we cannot handle the whole warehouse, right? So we get a little bit of it when we are born, but as we keep dissolving the karma, more will get downloaded.
Oh, that's
And for the person that is extremely spiritual, they want like the maximum karma onto this life so that they can exhume it and be done with it, right? So the more you download, the more. And then to me, it is like when I experience something like that, right? Then I know, okay, did I pass this thing? The weird part is okay, you get a loss, not so much as weird because you are at that change your energy, change your life. And I know how to change my energy. If I lose money here, I gain money somewhere else. Something else will happen where I get that money or something around that money. Does that make sense?
it does make sense a lot. However, if you are at the higher vibration, how do you attract those events that obviously you don't want? If you had a choice, dealing with the broken car or the car is riding smoothly, obviously, if you're on higher vibration, the part that the car is running smoothly would be attracted to you, not the ones that breaks, which is a
No,
lower vibration.
that's a
event.
mistake. That's a mistake on your part to think that if you get to a certain spirit, do you think Eckhart has no problems whatsoever? Eckhart just went through a cancer diagnosis and healing cancer. What are you
But
going to say
his-
about that?
His entire body is like, according to even Joe, on the higher vibration, his cells are
He should not have cancer, right?
exactly.
So,
Doesn't make
but he had cancer. So what I'm saying is just because you're on this earth, like Sadhguru says, there's a warehouse of karma. Even for Eckhart, there's a warehouse of karma. He dissolves this much karma, more will get downloaded. But he took the challenge, right? Look at how he faced the challenge. And he said he raised his vibrational energy and it didn't metastasize. So there's a difference in the way he dealt with that cancer treatment than what anybody else. If somebody else would have gone through chemo, somebody else would have gone through like he just had to get it removed, and he raised his vibrational frequency to that level that all of it was gone in one operation, right? All he had to do was that. So what I would say is challenges and dissolving of the challenges, you agree, right, April, that you have to change your energy. Just like Albert Einstein has said, or we know that it was a statement made by Albert Einstein that, what does he say? You cannot solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. Right?
He also said it's insane to do the same thing, expect different results. So if we get the same challenge and we do the same thing, obviously we're not gonna solve it. So we have to do something different.
That's correct. So the moment you say, I'm trying to read, there's a resistance to challenges and dissolving, saying that dissolving the challenge is the least appropriate thing to do is resistance of the mind, because somewhere this person has gotten addicted to being in a state of misery, just like April was saying, right? Once you want to be in a state of misery, you're okay with the challenge. The challenge is more familiar and more okay thing to be in than, because you've turned that into, you meaning not you, Patricia,
Identity.
that this person has built an identity around being
Victim.
miserable, a victim identity. The victim archetype has taken over. The wounded child has taken over. So they're getting to like feeding that part of it more than trying to be their higher self and saying, okay, let me change my energy. Let me raise my vibrational frequency. Let me connect to my inner being. Let me connect to my higher self and find an answer to the solution, right? And the solution is there, right somewhere. The solution will only arise once our energy state changes. So that's what I would say about dissolving challenges. So thank you, April. I think Hugh has his hands on the mouse. Are you trying to unmute yourself, Hugh? I know you experienced a challenge, so if you want to speak about it, thank you.
Yeah, resistance and true power is what I see going on here. The ego believes that the strength lies in the resistance. However, the truth is the resistance can cut you off from your being, which the only places of the true power. This is what I wound up doing. I wound up looking it up, and when I'm hearing that, because when they were talking about resistance, I was beginning to wonder if they didn't have the definition of resistance confused with Eckhart's view of resistance versus struggling. You know what I mean? Because when we resist, we're reacting. We're catching what's being said to us and reacting to it rather than letting it pass through us, right? So that being the resistance is the weakness and the fear masquerading as strength, then the ego perceives it as weakness, and it's actually your true being in its purity. So
Resistance is anything that we label as so-called negative. Resistance is the ego generating disappointment. Resistance is ego generating depression, anxiety, fear, frustration, annoyance.
Or saying that it shouldn't happen to us. Like what I just said, it shouldn't happen to you. And if you said, oh, it shouldn't happen to me, that would be resistance, right?
No, the moment that that incident occurs, I'm like banging on the car and I can't, or kicking the car and going, why are you not working? Right? I'm showing frustration. That is resistance. Instead of me being surrendered and moving, just calmly picking up the phone and calling, like searching for the towing company, right? Instead of calmly searching for the towing company, if I were to kick and scream scream at the world, I can't believe this is happening to me. It's early in the morning and I still work. If I do that, then that is
is it the emotion that you're expressing that way? Isn't that result of the thought that I'm a good person? Why did it happen to me?
I didn't get a thought that I'm a good person. Why did it happen to me?
Right, because you didn't resist it. But what happens to me when I feel like resisting it, I said, if something happens to me, why did it happen to me? And from that thought, all the other feelings come up. So I think for me, the main thought is, why me?
That's your victim identity. You're feeding the victim. The moment you say, why me, you're feeding the victim identity, right? You're feeding the ego. The moment you feed the ego, that's resistance.
That is resistance. Yeah. That's a form of resistance. And it is the victim, why me? And I used to think that too, but that's when I didn't love myself. I used to think that way back when I was in my first marriage. I used to think that a little bit in my second marriage in the beginning. I used to think that, but it was because I did not love myself. Once I figured out that I loved myself and I was worthy, that I was a part of the divine, I stopped thinking, why me? And started thinking, how do I get this to go away? How do I change this? How do I fix the energy around this? Right?
So now you're empowered that it happened to you for a reason. So you can now actually change that.
Yeah. I know that it all happened for a reason. All of it. I wouldn't be on this panel today if all of that hadn't happened in the way that it did, and me being who I am. But you have to learn to connect with and love yourself. Then you can stop being the victim. The victim doesn't truly love themselves. They're sad, they're scared, they feel bad. When you truly love yourself, you can pull yourself out of the victim mode. It doesn't mean you were not a victim of something, but you pull yourself out of the victim mode. And you start figuring out what was the meaning behind all of it.
So what do you do when actually a challenging situation happen and the resistance do arise? It's already there. So
you notice it. Well, the first step is noticing that it has. And what I do, if that arises, is for number one, if I'm around people or if I'm in a conversation or if I stop. I stop, I breathe, and I walk away. I either walk away or I just stand there and I breathe and I put myself back into presence power. Because I know I'm not centered. I know that I'm not in the right energy. I'm not in the right mindset. I'm not in the right perspective. Then I am back in that victim mode. I don't go back into victim mode, right? I mean, I had that, but more of my MO was F the world. It was F off everybody.
Angry, anger,
Yeah,
right?
mine was more anger. Yeah. So, but Patricia, if you notice, the first thing you notice it, breathe, stop, walk away. And you have to learn to talk yourself around that and say, okay, you've come back. I see that you've come back. We know that we're not the victim anymore. We know this isn't helpful. Whatever it is you have to say to yourself. Right. And sometimes it takes a minute or two or an hour. You have to put yourself back in presence power. You
Like I
have
know that
to learn to love yourself.
in certain situation when something happened, like even I got lost and I got immediate in panic mode. I honestly couldn't even in that moment figure out the next step. So I have to stop, because anything I would do out of that state would be something crazy that would put me even in worse situation than I am at that moment. So
Because
like
what you
Fernand said,
resist persists. What you resist persists. If you continue to be in the panic mode, it will persist. If you continue to be in traffic and get frustrated that you're running at 5 miles per hour, there's an accident and you're driving at 5 miles per hour. I mean, as Eckhart and Byron Katie says, you're lying, sitting, or standing somewhere. How does it matter where you're standing, sitting, or lying?
so I'm just like, okay, it's 5 minutes. So what do I do? Oh, I can just call Ashok and we have our conversation now because I have a phone. I can talk to him instead of, being worried that I'm not gonna get home on time to have a conversation before the live Q&A.
Are you going to make sure that you didn't schedule a call for Wednesday? Right? The other thing you could have done is not schedule. If he said,
I
I'm gonna call
wanted
you.
Monday or Tuesday, but Ashok couldn't. So he said, can we do it Wednesday before the meeting? So it was his idea.
So you should have told him, no, I want to do it on Thursday. If you cannot do Monday, Tuesday, do it on Thursday. Because Wednesday is a day, then it wouldn't have put you in that frustration mode about the traffic being in like at 5 miles per hour, right? Because in your mind, you're thinking about, oh, I have to get home to talk to Ashok, and I have to get ready, eat, and be ready before the live, and I'm not gonna have enough time. So you brought on the challenge for yourself by the way you scheduled your day, right? So like for me, Wednesday evening and Friday evening, nobody can take the time between the time I finish work. Nothing is scheduled. I have to be ready for the group meditation. I have to be ready, and I've been doing it for 5 years, right? Since 2019, I've been doing group meditations on Fridays. So I have to be ready, but nobody can take that time. I'd say, no, I've
So
told you to, right? 5 minutes, you can talk to me for 5 minutes. I have to go.
You love yourself enough to set that instead of, wanting to make other person happy and accommodate the other person at the expense of your state
Commitments.
And if you love yourself, you don't do that. The other thing is, Patricia, if you're going to be late, you accept you're going to be late. I'm going to be late. Okay. Now what?
I'm going to watch the traffic. I'm going to look at the sun. Maybe what is, like Carolyn May says in her evening meditation, everything is divine. What sounds am I listening to? What views am I seeing in this moment while I'm going 5 miles per hour? The universe is presenting something, right? Just like once I had the accident, I was like, okay, now it's time to get, what energy exchange am I going to have with the guy who's towing my car? What energy, if there's a police officer that's going to come, I'm going to have like the best time, like talking to him, right? So Sharon has held up her hand.
Yes,
You wanted to say something, Sharon? Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to say something about resistance and choices. Sometimes for me, when something happens and I'm saying, I'm getting in that mode about, oh, this shouldn't have happened today, and that kind of the victim modality. But then I'll say that I made a choice, like you were just explaining about set up your day differently, right? That I should have done that. So I think in a lot of cases, for me anyway, I'm not a victim because I made the choice. And as soon as I can accept that, I'm not a victim. I'm just a person who made a bad choice. That's all.
Beautiful. Yes. That's another thing Carolyn May says, right? What choices did I make today? If I made good choices, then bless those choices. If I made bad choices, then
And Poonam, what else? I also read somewhere that everything that happened, it happened exactly as it was supposed to. So that kind of thinking that it couldn't be any other way. So where this fits within that, so
I mean,
that's
where
what
does the choice fit?
the
into-
resistance shouldn't even exist, because it's kind of was divinely specifically designed to happen exactly as it did. So what we
Well-
resisting is resisting the divine.
if it was
I don't think
divinely, if it was divinely, even if it was divinely, so most, April, correct me if I'm wrong. Most psychics, most foretellers, fortune tellers, they will always say, even Edgar Casey, right? Nostradamus, people who do predictions, they say they cannot do an accurate prediction. However much Nostradamus predicted the atomic bomb, he predicted other things, right? How much ever he's been accurate in his predictions, they say they cannot predict accurately because it depends on our level of consciousness collectively on how the Earth's energy is going to exist at that moment and co-create that event of that moment.
And that's part of our free will, isn't that correct? So
That's
that's
correct.
where free will, if you want to call it that,
That's correct.
we can move in that direction.
So like I said, right? Like my car, whatever happened to my car, actually 2 weeks before. So this is how I know, and this is a question you had, Patricia, before this Facebook Live started, right? That how can you be so connected in the Vipassana retreat that you have these visions? So 2 weeks before, while I was driving, we have a lot of construction going on in my city. So there's a lot of construction, this concrete barriers. And as I was driving past these constant concrete barriers, I had this vision that my car hit the concrete barrier and it, like I have a Honda Fit, which is a small car, that it just like split apart like pieces, right? So that means the fact that something is going to, I am so connected to the divine. These are the signs that the divine shows that I already knew something was going to happen with my car.
Yeah.
So
Does
you
that make
did-
sense?
you
So my
did bring
body and my inner sense, but the moment I had that vision, I was like, oh my God, why am I having this thought? Right. And I was like, I'm hoping I'll be, I mean, I started like, okay, I need to be safe. This is not the right kind of thought. So when something started happening to the car, I was like, my body knew exactly that something is going wrong. And I started to move towards like the right lane and like exit off the interstate. Like I was driving 80 miles per hour. That's how I overheated the car, because I was like actually trying to like get away because I had that vision, right? What if I had stopped at 80 miles per hour? Like bam, in the middle of a highway where everybody else is driving 80 miles per hour. I would have had one of those crashes. But I was able to like move to the, because of that inner, there's somehow your cells of your body, your soul kind of can hear what's going to happen, right? So it's already moving the car over to the right. I was in the leftmost
But
lane.
I'm sorry to say, but what for all these people that do die in car crashes? They didn't have a soul that warned them?
They were not listening. They were not connected to the divine at that moment. Right?
So not everybody is tuned in and turned on to their inner knowing, to their intuition. And also there is, we have to remember the multiple timelines, right? So like when I do a reading on a person and I tell them what I see in the future, I often let them know, look, today I'm reading you door number 3. However, there are a bunch of other doors. You can wake up tomorrow and make me wrong. You can wake up tomorrow and say, I am moving to Hawaii today. That is not what I see today, but you are welcome to make me wrong because you always have choice.
That's the free
So
will.
right. There are, it doesn't mean that everything is just preset. That's it. We always have choice. We always have option. There's always another door that you can choose. And also you have to remember that, and like when I do readings, I tell people, I'm not God, but I'm going to give you what I'm getting. But there are
So-
some things that you're not meant to know. Right? It's the same concept as if we came here and we didn't have any lessons to learn, what would be the point? So you can't know everything all the time, because then there would be no learning, there would be no evolving.
So what is the benefit or advantage or even the point of knowing things before they happen if you really either can't change it or you can change it? And so what difference does it make then?
So
if you
for
know?
example, in death, believe it or not, many people ask if they're going to die when they get a reading. Believe it or not, many people ask that question. They look at me and say, am I going to die? And I'm like, for Jesus, really? This is what you want to know, right? And I have done readings on some people, and then within a month or so, say an uncle or somebody dies, and I did not see it. I was not given that information.
Mm.
And it is because they were not supposed to know. That death was supposed to become suddenly, because there are lessons in a death coming suddenly. They were not supposed to prepare for it, because there is lessons in having that type of death. I have had other readings where I have said, there will be somebody that's going to pass. It looks like it's a female. It looks like it is somebody within the family. Okay. And it's because they're supposed to get prepared for the
Mm.
death. Okay. That's why you can't always know
It's a
everything.
different lesson, yes, knowing. And
Right.
Hey, April, how often do you experience the synchronicities?
A lot. That's being tuned in, turned on, like Abraham, tapped in. If I'm paying attention, they do happen a lot. It's not always every day,
Yeah,
but it happens quite a bit.
because what I'm going through is like they come in waves. Like it's like all of a sudden it's like nothing for a couple of weeks and then boom.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could tell you one it's so far off the hook. I'm sitting there like unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'll tell you if you want to hear it.
Okay.
So I talked to a friend, and so we're talking, and I said, look, I'm gonna go down and look at the Key Bridge. Key Bridge is fell down. I'm from that area, so I just went down to the beach where I grew up, and I said I'm gonna go down by Troy's house. Well, Troy was the guy that died when we were 16, blah blah blah. Anyways, So I'm gonna go down there and I'm gonna take a shot of it and check it out. And he says, I miss him. And he says, Sharon, his sister, sent me a nice picture of him last year. And I'm like, well, Christ, I didn't know he had a sister. He said, yeah, he didn't. He had a sister, same color hair, yeah, blonde hair, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, well, he goes, look, I gotta go. I said, all right, well, he goes and hangs the phone up. I look down on my Facebook. There's a picture of Troy and Sharon. I'm looking at it. I mean, how in the hell? So the coincidence of that happening. I mean, a guy I haven't even talked about since 40 years, let alone didn't know he had a sister. And I'm looking at a picture that popped up of them two together. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was
So
a
it could
forever
either be
thing.
him saying hi, or it could be just the universe trying to show you and prove to you that this is real. It's probably both.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I went down there, and then what do? I've been researching drones, right? Because I got a really tall roof. I got to get up there. It's a long story. It's like this house is like 4 stories tall, So, anyways, I was researching drones, right? And that was 2 days ago. And where I went to Troy's house to look at the bridge, and when that happened, I'm sitting there, and there's this old man's. I'm like, is that a drone? And I'm listening. And sure enough, not only is it a drone, it's the model that I'm shopping. I mean, so it's just, and the guy was so mindful and peaceful. And we got talking about some wonderful conversation. I mean, he's like, and he's just sitting there chilling out, and I could have sat there all day with this guy, and he was just opening up, and we're talking about time, and I was telling him, of course, I'm laying that Eckerd stuff on him. I don't think he was buying it because, it was, we got talking about time. And I asked him, is time, if you think in the future, is that an illusion? Well, he went on and he looked at me. He goes, oh, here's what I know about time. He gave me the scientific explanation. It was, I mean, incredible. He said, it all starts with the past as it goes to the present, and then it tangles into the future. But he was giving me words I never heard before. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, but it's interesting. So just crazy things that happen. And they happen more and more ever since I've been going down the road with you all, keeps getting better and better. My meditations are getting longer, they're getting deeper. One of the mistakes I was making during meditation, just to share with you guys, I was more focused on the visual. I think I've mentioned to you before, I would see colors and see, and looking at the spots and stuff. I've come to find out I have a pixelated vision. It's a long story, but it's a thing that runs. My daughter has it too. Anyways, that's why I'm trying to figure out why ain't anybody else seeing what I'm seeing. But anyways, so I was reading Eckerd. Just how you open the book on Eckerd, and it's what you're thinking about. It just comes to you. It's just like, that's exactly what I need to hear. It's perfect. And when he starts talking about, you need to really focus on the feeling. So I use the visual to get started, and then I start paying attention to the feeling, because he don't want you to become pictured on on only a something that's illuminated or a visual can only get you so far. You got to really get into the feeling, sort of like in my view, it's like a daydream. When you're daydreaming as a kid and it feels so good and you don't want to be disturbed, that's how my meditations are going now. So, anyways, that's what I'd say.
Anything else, Patricia, or Hugh, or Sharon?
I think that was excellent. April really wonderfully covered all the aspects, especially about, the soul. What helps me huge to notice and surrender was actually understanding that my soul chose this. So what am I resisting? My own soul? It's like there was a reason I have to trust it. And that was the trust that happened for a reason and that I chose this. Not only that someone else decided that this little human will have this challenge, that I was a part of it. That was huge for me.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Anita,
Patricia.
I don't want to know when I'm gonna die, by the way. I don't, there was a couple of movies when just people, and once they knew, it was like, no, I wish I didn't. But you're right, it's
When you were just saying about that your consciousness would feel something, but you you would resist it, that would be the ego resisting the consciousness. Is that right, Poonam?
The ego resisting the consciousness.
No, interrupting it, like holding it back. And you know how the ego can jump in and easily make you think that you're an idiot and you should, or that you should be trying harder, or that you shouldn't do this or that, or whatever the problem is. And it can interrupt your conscious stream that you're getting from your
So,
higher levels.
let me think about this.
It's your
Um,
shadow. It's the shadow. So the ego is
Okay.
the wounded part. The ego is your identities. And my identity is I'm not important. The shadow comes in and says, why do you even try? People don't like you.
So there's three parts to it: the higher consciousness, the shadow, and the ego.
I think what Patricia is actually talking about is Carolyn Mace's way of teaching, where she says that everybody had, and April has talked about it over and over and over again, right? That we have a soul contract. So now that Patricia understands that there is a soul contract, which Eckhart does not talk about, that's why I was like, how do I tie these two different things? Because you're talking about the ego from Eckhart's point of view. What Patricia is talking about is from Carolyn Mace's point of view, which is that we all had a soul contract, and that's why this lesson was offered. So consider it as a divine experience. Right, Patricia?
Yes,
That's
that
what
makes
you're
sense.
saying. So that's what she's saying. That consider it as a divine experience. So
Yeah, but you have
in
to
a
watch
sense,
though, because many people will say, the ego will come in and say, God hates me. I should have never been here, right? Because of what's in the soul contract or the things that you're facing. No one ever loves me. The universe is against me. Like it'll tell you things like that. That's
so
the
in a
ego
sense
part.
that understanding the soul's contract will allow you to see the ego for what it is. Once you see the ego or the shadow first, right? Then you can actually dissolve it and surrender and actually get the lesson from it that you're supposed to learn versus resisting and just keep repeating. And I know everybody says that if you don't learn it first time, the next lesson will be more painful, more louder and louder, right? And louder until
Yes.
The
it's
soul contract, what that lets you do when you grasp that concept, that lets you have forgiveness. That lets you forgive, let go, and then move forward and create a new belief and love yourself. The soul contract allows you to forgive others and yourself.
the
Because you can see
unconditional
that
love.
there's a grander plan. And you can see that it was all played out perfectly. And you can see everybody played their role perfectly. That's
Right.
what the soul plan does.
So you don't blame anyone. you actually are grateful for the lesson they gave you, that teach you.
Okay, I think it's getting past Patricia's bedtime, so I know
Yeah.
it's getting late for April too, so incredibly amazing. Thank you so much for choosing your
Grateful.
divinity over your
Beautiful,
humanity.
Jonathan. I'm grateful to Jonathan for a wonderful question.
Yes, and Sri Lakshmi has been with us online in spite of
Yes, Thank you.
having some other
It's my
commitment.
pleasure. It's my
Thank you,
pleasure to
thank
listen
you.
to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sri Lakshmi. Many blessings, much love. Have a good night. We'll
Thank
meet in
you.
2 weeks. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.